Do you think that the dilution is an inevitable trade-off for growth or a warning sign of misaligned deals? I think you shared some thoughts about dilution and it not having to mean that, but curious to hear that perspective as well.
I mean, dilution is part of the game. If you're
It's part of the
making
game.
other money, I guess there's
I
different
think
levels
my
of it.
question is also, I think the question is tied into how much dilution should be okay. Like the dance about how much of my company am I giving away to who. Want to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, there's the trope, obviously, it'd be better to have 10% of a, unicorn than have 90% of something that never really grows. So there is some truth to that. But I think it's also, being honest with yourself as a founder of like what you want to build and how long you're willing to build that. If you're building for an exit or if you're building, a business that you want to run for 20 years. And again, then you have to align the right investors so that their time horizons are right or when they can get their capital back, et cetera. So I don't think there's no one right answer here. Dilution is part of it. You just have to figure out how does it work toward your ultimate goal of what you're trying to build.
A lack of dilution, not a good sign.
A lack of dilution, meaning you haven't raised money?
Yeah, well,
Maybe no
you're right. You got me. Maybe I'm holding on too hard about ownership, and even if I'm raising money, maybe Dan knows that I'm saying because of how much investors want to take away from my business.
I mean, there's ownership and there's control, and I think sometimes we convolute those things as well. Because, I mean, if you look at Zuckerberg and some of those guys, like they don't have that much ownership anymore, but they've done a really good job of maintaining, let's say good or not. They've done a impressive job of maintaining control. So I think those are also two different elements that you need to be thinking about as you're trying to grow your business and what you want it to become.
What does that mean for the difference of ownership versus control?
You could probably take it.
So Zach is an anomaly though. Zach is an anomaly because he owns a lot less shares than he has control. So let's say he owns, these numbers are wrong, let's say he owns 10% of Facebook, but the shares that he have can vote for 60% of the shares of Facebook. Very rough explanation of what he does. But there are very few people who've gotten that. But I would say at the stages, most of these founders are going to be coming to us for. We're not trying to steamroll decisions because then who's going to execute them? Who's going to execute?
Yeah.
If me holding 10% of your business tries to force you to do something you think is extremely wrong and do I make a decision at the board? It would be very naive of me to think that you're going to execute that in a good way. But coming back to your question, I think today, at least there's places you can go to see what typical dilution for your stage is. I mean, Carter releases quite good data on this. I would say maybe pre-seed, it's like 20 to 30% average. Series A, maybe 20, 25, and then B onwards, it's less than 20% most of the time. But that's very rough numbers.
I thought it was 10 to 15 for early stage.
Ooh. Not that's not what the Carter data shows. At least the one I read, if I read it properly.
Yeah.
Also raising a lot bigger checks in most of the Carter data. So they're raising $1 million, $2 million pre-seed. And then you might lose 20% here. If you're raising 100K, you're probably looking more like a 10%.
Different. And that's how you can solve for your dilution issue. If you only want to dilute 10%, you wanted initially $1 million, take less for the valuation you're being given.
Fair enough. Art?
Let me echo that. Take less. Can we focus on it? Honestly.
Take less.
Because seriously, how many people are coming to us, or I think we're about the same stage, asking for $500,000, like $1 million, $2 million. They've never had that kind of money. If I'd never had that kind of money, I'm going to waste a lot of it. And again, it's easier, cheaper to build. So like, take a bet on yourself and raise 50K, 100K, prove that you can do something with somebody else's money. And then it's a lot easier to raise more money versus like, give me 500K, even though I've never handled other people's money before and proven that I could do something good with it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so I think, like you said earlier, it's a bit of a dance, so you better be a good dancer. to make sure you don't lose the sight of the team. But that's important, right? Because founders need to be educated to understand, do I have an exciting business? Because it's a supply and demand game. Very exciting startup will raise at with very good dilution, meaning, maybe it's 5-10%.
Yeah.
And others, for the same amount of money, maybe they'll have to dilute by 20%. So your business matters, right? The traction you have, the market as well. 5 years ago, we were in what we call the founders market, right? Founders have the choice to pick the good VC, so high valuation, as you mentioned earlier, which was obviously not great for them. And now we are more back to an investor market where, the investor choose who they want to work with. And so that means you need to understand as an individual, do I have an exciting business or not, right? And that tells you a lot. And then I think from there, there are general stats. I typically tell founder for every cycle is 10 to 25% dilution. If you do a pre-seed and then you do a seed and then you get to a Series A, the idea, and Maina can confirm or disagree, typically at the Series A, that is when a founding team will lose ownership of their business, right? But you do not want to have a startup that goes into a Series A, I suppose, and they have already less than 50%. These are ideal stats. Sometimes it's not the case. Obviously, I'm not involved as much in Series A, more into pre-seed to seed. But I would say for founders looking at those stages, 10 to 25% is decent. It's on par. But if you have a very good business, you'll push for 5%. And if your business is so-so, maybe you'll have 30%. It's a lot, but, it's just what it is. Yeah. It's a supply and demand game at the end of the day.
Different for everyone.
Yeah.
It's different for everyone. And sometimes it's tactics. If I was a founder in a very competitive space, that capital is very important. I would take more dilution today to have as many investors within my company as possible, and then starve the others, your competitors, of that capital. So sometimes dilution can be used to your own advantage.
I think it's very true, because another way to look at it is sometimes it's better to dilute yourself a lot more now to have the cash to build, because when cash is there, take it. And then in the future, you have runway. Whereas you're trying to raise that $500,000 and you don't accept those terms, and then 9 months later, sadly, you are on some list that says the startup doesn't work anymore. And that's quite sad, and it happens a lot more than it should, right? So even us, we tell our founders, listen, you raise 100, 200, 300K after us. That's great. Now you're looking to raise $2 million. Storytelling. As opposed to say you're raising $2 million, perhaps raise $500,000 now. And then you can say to those investors, listen, this is part of a longer journey where we will top up another $2 million at a much higher valuation, right? A lot of it is storytelling and positioning and branding and all that stuff.
There's no one-size-fits-all formula.
No, there's
is
not.
there?
None.
That's what's an exciting job.
That's why it's exciting, some would say. Would you say that makes it exciting for you guys, the dance?
Ooh,
No, the dance is not what is exciting. It's the idea of working with smart people, building, right? That's the exciting part. It's not about the dance of...
The dance is
Because for us as an accelerator, we have firm and, how do you call it? For us as an accelerator, it's like standard ticket size, right? So there is not much negotiation around the terms. I think for later stage VC, maybe the dance is there, but I don't think the dance is what is exciting, really. That's not what I meant.
Just about working with the smart.
It's about working with smart people and building, right? Like it's something, and having access to those people. It's quite amazing if you think about it.
I agree. I mean,
Okay.
you're looking for the category leaders of tomorrow, and you want to get to that point as fast as possible, rather than necessarily all these negotiations. But sometimes it's fun. I would like. It's sometimes cool.
When it's good and you're reflective of the journey, it's like, okay, like this is why we do it.